It is my great pleasure to see you all in this number here, and I have just explained to our guest who each one of you is. So he already has some questions that he would like to ask some people that he doesn't know. We will leave that for later. So this is Dialogues on Scene Design series, and this is our popular series which we are realizing with the great support and in collaboration with Infant Festival and with Cultural Center of Novi Sad. And basically what we are doing here is trying to represent in a way our friends who come from all domains that correlate with the field of scene design. And we already had the pleasure of being introduced in these dialogues with our famous directors and actors and a dancer and performance creator. And today I have the biggest pleasure to introduce one of the most popular lighting professor worldwide. So this is Mr. Majkl Remzor, our great friend. When I say our, I mean our school's friend, but really my personal friend, and of course that I'm so excited that he's here with us today. So the thing is that you have already read his, I guess, biography that is on our website, but this is something that I found on the internet. So it says that you know that Majkl is a Stanford resident professor and that he's also an honorary professor of Central Academy of Drama from Beijing. But also there in his resume, you can see that he was a guest professor at the scene design program that happened during years at the University of Arts in Belgrade. And what I wanted to say to Majkl, that please update your CV because now you're visiting professor at the Faculty of Technical Sciences and you're involved in scene design programs. So please do that when you come home.
Thank you.
Yes, and welcome. So we were just talking about how we should start this, and I thought that the good thing would be to start about how I met Majkl, because that happened to me when I was something like your age, so I was like 20, and Rasha asked me to come to Belgrade to listen to one of the great professors from this field, and I was just a student of architecture here, and never before I had the opportunity to leave the country. So at 2002, I was never abroad. We were living in a very problematic and turbulent environment. And when I met Majkl, I just asked him, how come you're here? And he said, well, Rash asked me, would you like to come? And here I am. And for me, that was just like a splash of internationalism, which just really gave me some sort of a hope that there is something good that's going to happen, and that perhaps we have to use this man as a tunnel to go to that little light that I saw at that very moment. So Majkl, can you just start with your experience from Belgrade, and we would like to know everything that now from this perspective, when you look at that time, how was it? What changed? What kept you coming here for so many years?
Rasha kept asking me. No, I don't know. You said that it brought internationalism to you. I usually introduce myself as an internationalist. Internationalism, whatever that means, is something that I'm very interested in. I was lucky enough that when I was very young, I was introduced to travel because I had a grandmother who was important to me, and she took me on a trip. And then early in my career teaching, I had a mentor who was the second president of OISTAT, this international organization, and he was president for a few years. And then he was a major person in the United States to help our organization, like SCEN, the USITT, United States Institute for Theater Technology. And he suggested I might want to go to a meeting, which I did. And perhaps in the way that you're saying that I came over here and spoke to people, going to that meeting, which happened in Riga at the time in the Soviet Union, that it was eye-opening that there were all of these different people from different places, some of which were major European countries that I knew about. Some were smaller countries or Eastern European countries or Asian countries that I didn't know anything about. And we sat around and talked as we did and got to know each other. And I really enjoyed the aspect of having a wider perspective about what we do. We, in this case, the subject is scene design. And I consider myself a scene design, a scenographer in ways. I design scenery occasionally, as well as lighting all the time. And I studied as a director. So what I do in theater, what I do design-wise in theater, is based on wanting to tell stories. And people do that in different ways in different countries. And lighting is an unusual area of the discipline because although people turn on lighting in almost every theater that exists, the idea of designing with light, designing lighting was and still is strange in many places. Sure, I know how to turn on lights and we can see what goes on, but what does design mean? How do you design? You know, how do you do that? And there are ways that you can see even do things. It's the same question if I asked you, how do you design a building or how do you design a set? You know, it's thin air and you come up with something. What do you do? How do you do that? And it's the same with lighting, except it's with the medium of light, which is something that people, even though you live with it all the time, people don't understand it, how it works. I mean, I'm looking at you and I can see how you all look, and I think, I don't know how I look, but if my eyes look like your eyes, you can't see me that well because of eye sockets and shadows from down below. There's just things that you work in. And because of this international organization, I met Rasha, and we had conversations about things, and in the way that people are compatible with each other. You meet people and they're nice, they're interesting, they're interested, and probably vice versa, I don't know. You can't really say we developed a relationship, we developed a collegial relationship. We knew each other. And at some point he asked if I would come do this, and I said, yeah, sure, I would like to. Probably over my career, I've lectured and taught workshops, I think in 20 countries when I counted up a while back in order to update my resume.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw that. You said 19.
Okay, that's close to 20. And I can't count Serbia again because I've already been here. And when I do it, it's really interesting to see how people think about theater and do theater. And usually it's not with a lot of concentration on lighting, because the question is, who does lighting in different cultures, in different theaters? And I had a research project some years ago, and I went around the world and talked to people, including people in Serbia, about that. So you're a lighting designer, or you think you're a lighting designer. What makes you a lighting designer? Who do you work with? What's important? Who cares? Which is a big question. Mm-hmm. Who cares? Somebody can work diligently, as you can, designing a building or scenery, and in the end, who cares? If it's there or if it's not, if it's good or it's not. What is the audience that we work for? And again, that's different in different countries. There's different kinds of answers, and that spread of opinions and the cultural differences has always been interesting to me. So coming to Serbia was an interesting, I came in at an interesting time as well, a difficult time. And I like people. So in addition to coming and doing whatever professional work, talking about things, I like to talk to people and see what life is like, to see what people's opinions of life and existence and theater and society and politics and money and anything. It's just, you know, what makes life? What interests you? What do you talk about? And there's some students here that we did this the other day. And actually, just as a side note, and you probably know this, OISTAT, this international organization, is, we have meetings in different places that are subject-based. And so you have lectures, you have presentations, you have question and answers, and you have discussion. And there's a relative value to that. It's good. And then when you're done with the day, you go somewhere and you sit around and have dinner with people and you sit around and drink with people and you talk further. And actually there's more value that one gets on that informal conversation when you really talk to somebody. I mean, you're listening to me and maybe we'll have question and answer and we talk. And I don't know what you get from that. But I can tell you that if you came to dinner with me tonight and we talked for another 3 hours, we would both have more of an understanding of each other and what we do. And this is what I got to do when I was first coming to Serbia, to Belgrade, to the University of the Arts, is meet the students and talk about what we did. And we did some workshops in the theater, Atelier 212, and working with the electrician there as well, and assigning projects that are generally relatively simple, but not necessarily easy to do. Not easy to do because you have to think about what you want to do, and that's harder than actually figuring out what to do. And in doing this, I got to know a number of the students well, and I know that my observation of Serbia and Serbian theater at the time and education in theater was not progressive. It was like stalled for a long period of time. That I should look around before I say some of this. I have to be more tactful. It hadn't changed seemingly it had not changed in many years. And to me, theater is an exciting discipline. We were talking earlier this morning with students. When you do a show, you should ask a question: who cares? What are you doing? And it should be pertinent. It should be engaging. The audience that you're doing it for should appreciate it in some way. So it has to engage somehow. And to do that, I believe that students need to be pushed. We as theater artists need to be pushed. You can't always just do the same things that you've been doing for years and have it be right, because times and society changes. And over some time in Serbia, I noticed that some people that I worked with had more of an aptitude for lighting, and others didn't, which makes sense. I certainly don't have an aptitude for music or singing. But how could one progress this area and succeed? And the idea that there needed to be people who could teach this, who could be leaders in this area, who were engaging and industrious and could push it further. I'm remembering one person that I worked with who was, I thought, a very good person. He worked for the National Theater as well. And in talking with him, he was very unhappy with all of his work for the National Theater and very happy doing other things. So he would work for the National Theater in ways that he thought were not interesting, and then he would go off and do corporate shows or fashion shows or things that he thought was interesting. And I like theater a lot. So how does one stop theater from dying? How does one make a performance structure that's interesting, engaging to everybody sitting here at your ages and your interest, and not just 70-year-old people who have enough money to buy a big ticket and say they went to the opera last night with their friends at a cocktail party or something? And this is the same in the U.S. as well as everywhere else. How do you make a challenging theater? And I found that the university students that I was teaching really wanted to do that and had the desire to do it. So it was nice to come back and not always deal with the same students, but deal with the same type of students. I mean, if you go to the university, you ought to have an open mind, and you ought to be a hard worker, and you ought to want to engage in things. And my interaction with students was along this line, which caused me to want to come back, as I do in other places. And so I don't know if that answered the question.
Yes, yes. I just told before this interview, he's very concise, so perhaps we will be over in half an hour. But obviously, I was wrong. So the thing is that you were an active participator, not just an observer of development of theater education here in a way. So now, after 15 years, when you look back at the whole process, do you see, did we get somewhere? Do you know we are here inside of it? We are rethinking, evaluating every time?
You are, and it seems to me you're struggling to do that. The BTUF is an important thing that goes on. The biennial of the design exhibit, the biennial design exhibit, I thought was extremely important. I've been involved with other countries that don't have a history of doing that and are starting to do it because of OISTAT meetings that come, because of promoting it. This goes to the question of who cares. I mean, if any of you are artists and you design scenery and you have a show, it happens and then goes away, in the end, who cares? If the fact that there was an exhibit of design that was celebrated, people's work was celebrated, there was identification, it recognizes the excellent in work that goes on, which encourages us all to do excellent work. I'm not a receiver of that many awards, but I feel very good when that happens. It makes me want to do, more, not say, okay, I can retire now, but it's a way of really. I had a friend who constantly said we don't celebrate ourselves enough. In theater, we work on problems. You're doing something, and the only thing you talk about is the problem to get it done, and the problem that you're facing, and the problem that's not happening. And that might only be 15, 20% of the show. All the other 80% is just fine, but you don't talk about it because it's going well. You talk about problems. And she used to point out to me that we just don't celebrate ourselves and our success enough. Because we do extraordinarily good work. You look around and very interesting visualizations and scenography happen, and that should be celebrated so that other people see that and see that it's a worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, definitely, it is. But now you had the chance to work a little bit with our BA students, and of course you had the 3 days workshop with our MA students. So can you just point out what are the positive aspects of working with them and what are the issues that we should work on a little
I don't know. I don't think it's specific that way. The issues always are, how are you going to get anything done? It's easier to have a good idea than it is to get a good idea done.
That's exactly why I asked this, because we had arguments during all these days, because Michael thinks that we are over-intellectualizing things and that we should be more practically oriented. And I believe that this is just the way that you're, in a way, in sort of an extreme in American system of education, and here we have something completely opposite. So we are just developing ideas and things, and we somehow celebrate creative thinking.
Nothing wrong with that.
Occasionally we do something. So that's the question. I don't really believe that the middle of that is the answer. I'm not sure where the answer is.
Well, in order to good work, you have to have creative ideas. There's certainly nothing wrong with that, and that's good. But then if you're actually going to do something for somebody else, if you're going to make a performance or an installation or something for observers or for an audience, then you need product. And to me, this is always the difficult part, how you go from creative idea to product. Yeah. Because you need an audience, you need observers to experience the product in order to have a response. That should be why you're doing it. And it's very difficult. I firmly believe it's really hard to make good theater. It's not easy. And it's normal to make theater. You can get a script and you can have actors on stage and you can have scenery or not and you can act something. So that's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But is that really good? And you start talking about these values, these issues like that, and what is really good. And we an audience are a vast spread of different kinds of people with ideas and backgrounds and interests, so that you have a bunch of people who like old-fashioned opera that was designed and built 20 years ago and is still on the stage every few years, and you can go see it. And there are other people who would fall asleep with that and want to be in a little space like this, yes, and have water squirted on them from the stage or something. I don't know. But there's all of these different values that one wants to say, how do you do something that's right for the audience?
Is it really just the audience? I mean, we want to believe that there is something inside of an artistic personality that just needs to get out, and the audience is there or it's not there. So we are talking about some quite different standpoints.
I think both of those are true. I enjoy doing good work. I really, I don't like all of my work that way, but I think I'm pretty good, and I get reward from doing it, I know. And I'm thinking of experiences I've had bringing my wife, who's one of my strongest critics, so something I think is really nice and whatever it is, and she says, why didn't you use more color? Or some simple comment like that. Yeah.
More color in American productions? Are you sure?
And it's, in a way, it's really good critiquing, because it's, she doesn't sit through my rehearsals. She'll come and see a show when I say you should come see a show. I think you'd find this interesting. Yes. And
now that we are talking about critique and audience and things, if we are making our play for a specific audience, I mean for American audience. A
very specific audience, whoever it is.
Yeah, what happens when you are showing it in the UK? And we talked the other day about monochromatic idea of lighting the shows in the UK. What happens then? This audience wants something different. What happens with the show?
Wants is a strange verb. I mean, I'm not sure an audience wants anything. An audience expects. I mean, there's natural expectations of some sort. And feeding those natural expectations is a good way of providing what you want to an audience. Doing something contrary to those natural expectations is also interesting to an audience because it's challenging. And which is the neat thing about our business. There are sort of rules of how to do things, but in fact, breaking all the rules sometimes is the best way to do it. It's how do you, in relation to what you want to do, because you always don't want to do the same thing. It's, I've designed lights for over 50 years already, and I know that there's differences in what audiences expect and the way they see it, and have enjoyed doing different things. I guess maybe I'll break. I wanted to preach a little bit about scene design. And there used to be, or maybe there still is, a Czech concept that was promoted on scene design, which was like active design or something. Is that? And I wasn't really sure what that is. From the Czech Republic, they explain things, and I never can understand the explanations. But to me, it brought on the concept of active as in both engaging and moving. And some of my teaching with the students who are here and have heard me, automatically as a designer, one of the things I want to do is make a show interesting for the audience. And actually, when I watch an audience doing that, I get reward from things that I know I've done, the way I've made things look, the way we talk about moments, the way I've created a moment and highlighted it, and then I do mostly musicals. I design mostly American musicals. And the audience, you're bringing the audience along a journey and a path that they, with a story, and then it's punctuated in places. And I can see I'm pleased with moments that I have made. And the kinds of things that I do also have moving scenery, because there are shows with 17 scenes or 23 scenes, and there has to be movement. And I guess I would encourage, I'll speak a little bit of my own prejudices. The thing that I like least is working on a play that has walls and doors. It's the least interesting thing to do is, to have a room and walls and doors, and we sit here and drink tea and talk about an argument or something, I don't know. And I have to believe that there is a really engaging way to use scenery that's helpful to engage an audience and make them interested in it. If you think of going to museums and galleries and looking at art, which I do, I like to do that a lot, the question is what engages you? What causes you to want to look at one picture and not another picture? And it would be different for different people. I mean, it's different for my wife and I. We do it a lot together. And whatever that difference is means there's things in each of those pieces of art that are done in a way that engage that person. And as designers, we ought to be fighting to really do interesting visuals that help tell the story of the show, whatever that story is, however abstract or monumental or however it is, to help tell that so that the audience sees it in an engaging way. I don't know if you talk here about the difference in scenery as being engaging or being decoration. I mean, to
Definitely.
me, decoration is a negative word.
Yeah, but you know the whole story about the scene design. And interesting thing is that I wanted to ask you before, but you're just
Going on,
and I just have no
way to interrupt.
Yes. So the thing is that I saw on your program at Stanford that you use term scene design. So we are not we thought that we were the only ones here in Europe, I mean, who are really engaged with that term, because the others use stage design. We are non-stop having these arguments. Is it stage? Is it set? Is it scenography? What's happening? You know the whole problem about the word scenography that
Yes.
we had here, and we couldn't just use it. And now you're using, after all these terms, you're now using officially scene design in all your curricula and things where you're mentioning it. I saw that advanced
Okay,
design.
I hadn't noticed, but that might be.
Yeah, I just went through Stanford.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's all there. So that's the thing, that we never really perceive, you say, scenery as a decoration, because that's what we are trying to.
Trying to do something more than that.
Yes, we're really trying not even to think about decoration.
But you're suggesting that scene design is an old term, an old-fashioned term?
No. I just wanted, if you can just expand on that a little bit, because I think it's very important, not just for the students, but for the wider audience to understand what the term really is. It's not decoration.
No, it's not decoration.
It's not set anymore. It's not just stage.
Yeah, okay. You're pushing me in ways that I hadn't thought about, because you're in your classic Serbian way,
I'm
intellectualizing the whole issue.
That's
And
my subject.
I've been at Stanford long enough in dealing with this that I probably wrote those things.
Mm-hmm.
And if any of the students who heard me talking about this should say shame on me, I'm sure I wrote it without thinking of the choice that I was making. It's
Mm-hmm.
just what I did.
Okay, but I believe that
Yeah, no, I
it's
can speak
always
to that.
inside. I mean, it's not just something
We
that's.
are very happy with your choice.
Yeah, we are very happy.
Well, but
yes.
there are scenes, and actually in my lectures this week that I've talked to people, I've talked about moments. Moments are a part of a scene. And there are many moments. I have a student director that I'm working with who is directing a musical coming up, and she's breaking the show down not into acts and scenes, but moments. And I forget, she had 27 moments for the show, I think, that are structured as things that should come across to the audience. We're sitting here, we're talking, that's interesting. Now I'm falling asleep and it's dull. That happens. Then somebody, whatever structures, it's what moves a show along. And certainly in lighting, I live by this. I create multiple moments within a show. The simplest shows that I've done in the last year probably have 40 lighting changes. And the most complicated shows have like 400. And each of those changes are due to moments. We talked about a workshop we might do here has to do with creating a show that is based on lighting changes, and when do you make lighting changes? And you make lighting changes to create moments. One of the ways, first two, is the beginning and the ending. Those are two pretty important moments on a show. And then other moments are when people enter the stage or exit the stage. I mean, we have a dialogue here. If somebody else comes in and we all look over there, we're changing the structure, something else happens. So you create something around that. And then depending on what the real content is, maybe that's important and you do it in a strong way, or maybe it's not, but it's active in that way. And scene design to me is looking at the story and the visual scene, the visual storytelling that should go on to help the audience understand what the story is, what the show is, and the way you want them to understand it. And that takes examination. It's not reading a description of where I'm thinking of regular plays. We do a lot of regular plays at Stanford, and then we do a lot of strange, abstract plays. We do a combination. And we do a lot of devised plays, which are even more strange and abstract usually. And you have to go at what is a way of getting something to an audience? What is a way that you can get across what's happening? And lighting-wise, I keep going back to lighting because that's what I do more than anything else, you light objects on stage. The only reason we see stuff is you got light coming off of a source that's striking an object, a table or a face, that bounces back and hits you in the eyeball, and you register the stuff and you know what it looks like. So the stage is full of objects, which includes any scenery. If there's a designer who's put scenery up there, it has to do with the costumes that the people are wearing, and it has to do with the people. When we do scenic configurations, you do that with people. Where are people? I was talking about reading plays. I hate reading plays. It's the dullest part of my professional career. But when I read plays, I see relationships of characters. I don't always see scenery, but I have relationships of characters. Who's dominant? What's the story of all of this? And to me, the scenery should help and relate it that way. It should find a way to be able to tell the moments, to play the scenes, and do that. I'm just making this up because I never really thought about scene design versus set design. We create scenery, which are our sets. And in the old-fashioned way, there's the first act set and the second act set and the third act set. So those are our sets of scenery. But I think that since film and television can really do realistic narrative storytelling better than we can on stage. On stage, we can have better contact with individuals. I mean, I'm a real person sitting here, I'm talking to real people sitting here, and somehow there's a contact that goes on that way that's different than if you're looking at a film. And if a film, I'm thinking of a lot of really nice films that have really nice scenery, and they're almost always, naturalistic stories of some kind, a realistic story. On stage, it's more engaging not to use realism, but to do things that enhance the real contact between performers and audience. I mean, that's what makes it special. We were talking this morning with the BA students. And as we talked, looking at them, I was reminded in what I saw as good performance. Because I sit and I watch a show and you're seeing the stage full of things that go on. And when somebody's really doing good performance, you kind of lock in on them and you look at their eyes and you're brought into what they're doing because it interests you. And the rest of it kind of fuzzes out like in a film, but you're brought into it in a certain way. And that has to do with the liveness. That certainly doesn't happen to me when I watch TV or a film. I watch the pictures and I get the story and it can be really nice and engaging and fun and whatever it is. But I just know that in theater, I make a lot of eye-to-eye contact. The actor probably doesn't see my eyes because I'm in the dark and they don't care. But I know that that's what I'm looking at. And as sitting around the circle this morning when we were doing that, there was a lot of eye contact. And that's what makes things real. Sound is important also.
Yes. Sound design, yes.
Attention.
Well, the very interesting thing that I wanted to tell you earlier, but I forgot, and that is a sort of a feedback from MA students after the workshop, that you're all the time you're telling about designing with light, but what they told me is that they were thanking me for the opportunity to work with you, and I said, don't thank me, thank the school. And they said, Michael, in a way, taught us to think with light. I think it is a very, very nice thing. Perhaps it's over-intellectualizing your field of work, but I would remember that because it's really nice thing to hear.
None of you here are my students directly that way. But if you want to work with light, you have to start looking at light and recognizing what it is. It's like saying you should design scenery or paint a picture and have never really looked at pictures. How are you going to do that? You need to look at things and like them or not like them and be influenced. And as I look at all of you sitting there, I wish I had a mirror that I could hold up. I generally don't like the way you look. You have all this light overhead on you, and almost everybody's eye sockets, are all in shadow. You know, I'm wanting to look at people's eyes, and thank goodness there's some people with sort of flat eyes in their face, because then it shows up a little bit more. But this kind of lighting for that is not attractive. You know, I can see you all, I don't miss anybody, but, you know, the fact that eyes go into darkness, which is not the same here on the side. And Russia particularly has flat eyes, so it's no, it makes it easy to see a face, and you know, faces are that's a big part of what we do, and you have to start to look at light and do it. I was in one of the sessions I was saying that when I teach one of the courses, you have to keep a lighting journal, and every day you have to put down 3 different kinds of things that you've seen, and you either have to sketch it or take a digital photo or write a description to notice what the light is. It's the only way that you can really start to do that, and to learn to work that way, and realize that the only reason you see anything is because of the light. So the way you see it is because of the light. Without light, you wouldn't see anything. It wouldn't exist. There's a whole theory that color doesn't exist. The only reason we see color is the way we interpret wavelengths, and they're just different wavelengths, and there's no real color. It's an oddity of our brain that we say this is orange and this is blue, because that's all gray. And, you know, just the way that these silly wavelengths are dealing. So that's nice. I think that usually when I'm starting to teach, because there's not really a course on lighting design here, there's experience with lighting, is the first thing is to pay attention to light. And once you do that, then you can start to use that. It's like paying attention to color or composition in paintings. Once you see it and see how it's done in different ways, then you can start to use your own imagination and your own creativity to do something with it. And it's a really broad field, because you can do stuff like this, or you can do really strange, I mean, it's just wide open. How people receive information visually is wide open.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yeah, nice, yes.
The one thing that was not a problem here, I also teach regularly in China, and I was on the internet with all my ego. I happened to be looking at myself on the internet.
Nice thing, Michael.
No, just going, I think I was looking at pictures. There was a picture of somebody else, and I thought, oh goodness, I wonder what pictures of me are there. So I looked it up. But as I was going through, from something that I had taught in Shanghai a while back, their reaction to me as a teacher was that they really enjoyed what I did, because maybe it's similar. I made them make choices about the light, and I made them speak about it. This is true of you people here too. The issue is to verbalize about this. I mean, if you had to describe me, how do I look? And if you say, you know, an old man with white hair and blue shirt, that's sort of the simplest way you can describe me. So how do you do more than that? That's like if I wanted to paint a picture of you, and I just, you know, I was 3 years old and I could, you know, make a head and eyes and a mouth, but that's the most simplistic way. What else is there that you can do? And light reveals us all in these different ways, and color and intensity and angle and all of these things are useful design elements that allow you to work with the medium of light. So you have to understand it, I guess, and I hope that what we did with the MA students this week particularly is helpful to understand light. And you're a painter already, so you probably were more advanced there, because you can't be a photographer or a painter without understanding you're painting light. I mean, that's how everything is revealed.
Yes, I can just imagine that it was very challenging starting to work in China, because of we were talking about their idea of lighting the stage with just plain light, just
a lot of white light.
And I can just imagine how it looked like when you started to make them use something different or to think different. It's a huge educational step for them, I guess.
Yeah, and my challenge for you guys generally was to make the educational step from conceptualizing to realizing.
Write that down.
know, how do you make something real? Because it's hard. I mean, it's hard for me. I mean, we have to start turning lights on and making pictures on stage that you want to be good and right and appropriate. And these terms have no real definition. You know, what is good or right or appropriate in the way that you're lighting something. It's a relationship you have with the director more than anything else on how to tell that story. And then you determine that, just as you determine you want to, you know, make your painting pictures however you do it. And it's usually determining it without a lot of forethought. I mentioned earlier in one of the groups that I taught a class on creativity for a while. I organized a class on creativity, which means I had one session and I had 9 others where I invited guests who were creative in different ways on how to do it. And the thing that was most powerful to me that came out of all of that is that artists don't necessarily know where they're going to go with what they do. That they have the confidence that once they start to do something, that it will end up good, that one step leads to the next, to the next, to the next, which is, I guess, why I push bringing things to reality. Start to do something, and then actually it'll start to do things, because it's one thing will lead to the next, either because you don't like what you're doing, or you really do like it, and it goes to the next step, whatever that is. And so starting to use the applied art of theater is, rather than the theoretical art of theater, is an important thing.
I really think that this point, when you stop rethinking and start working, that's the crucial point in somebody's work. And I think it's a little bit of individualistic thing.
Very. I mean, that's why it's hard to teach any of this. I mean, what I'm saying to students is you got to be creative. And here I'm the teacher, and how do I teach you to be creative? You know, I can't. It doesn't happen. You have to do something, and you can be guided in ways, hopefully to increase your creativity, to get a better understanding, but you have to do something. You can't watch me and think that what I do is creative and do it again, because duplicating what I do or what anybody does isn't creative. That's, in fact, one of the strengths in China, is duplicating things, doing, you know, having them understand what they should do and doing that well. And that's different than coming up with a creative idea that is an idea. It's, it has been a blessing in my life to do the things internationally that I've been involved with. This international organization, OISTAT, the
I just wanted to start
organization of
OISTAT,
scenographers, theater architects, and technicians, are professionally an excellent group of people who want to and do give back to the discipline of theater. In the same way that I've developed a relationship with Rasha and you, you are good people who want to do good things. You're not selfish, you're not guarded, you're not, and this is true of virtually all of the international colleagues that I've created, that I have met through OISTAT, this international organization. And it comes from volunteerism. I can remember having conversations with some people in some places about volunteerism. You know, why should I do that?
Why should I volunteer?
Yeah, why should one do that? It's nothing but work.
I don't have any benefit.
Yeah,
I know that.
Nothing comes back, you know, so what it is. And actually, it's not true. It's not that you don't have a benefit and that nothing comes back. I mean, to me, for all my volunteer effort, I get to sit here and see Novi Sad and talk to you and meet people and have my ideas change and, you know, grow and enlarge because of the interaction that happens that way. And I know my theatrical colleagues who also might be very busy designing internationally or wherever they go. You go somewhere, you go to your hotel, you go to the theater, you do your show, and you get out of there, and you don't have any of the same kind of contact. You don't have any of the same desire to have conversations to help, that ultimately help you grow and that probably help the other people grow. The big thing that I try to tell people about an international organization like that, or what's happening here in Serbia, is that the benefit is twofold. In other words, this international organization has brought us together, and so I'm here and I'm talking to you, so you hear some things maybe you don't hear in the same way. But I also have an experience being here, seeing theater, talking to people, and I go home and I teach classes and I talk to colleagues at my university or at USITT conferences where I have a broader set of colleagues, or I go to China or Egypt or Germany and talk about the same things. So what I learned from my experiences in places is broadened out in other places that I go. In the same way that coming here, I'm not just talking about me in the US, there's a number of things from these other areas that I talk to. So it helps starting in some general and soft way, it really helps spread an understanding of the diversity of culture. And is quite wonderful that way, as well as all the specifics, like giving a talk like this or teaching, or the things that happen that way.
The wonderful thing is that you're actually practicing that. So Michael is a true believer in what
I believe it, yeah.
Yes, because you're really trying to engage younger people into the thing that you believe in. So this is not just some political thing, you know, that politicians always say, diversity, internationalism, things, we should spread, we should move, we should be mobile and things, but really, truly nobody's doing anything. And I know that you still believe after all these years and things.
You're all too young here to experience some of the things that I have, but there's this what has been a wonderful worldwide exhibit of scenography called the Prague Quadrennial. Every 4 years, it's a big exhibit of design, stage design scenography. And I started going to it sometime in the 90s, I guess. I can't really remember. And it was eye-opening to me to see the way scene design, stage design, scenography, costumes was done around the world. Because I come from the US, and I know the way to do things. If it takes place in a room, you make a room. You know, and if it's very simple. Most of our design is based on realism. It's things that interest me the least, but that's the majority of what our theaters do. And so then I go to an exhibit of design, and I don't see one room, you know, not one set of walls in a box set. It was like, wow, is that cool? And went back some. And because I'm interested in students, this organization, OISTAT, we started this idea of a Scenofest, a festival of scenography. Pamela Howard coined the name. She's
the mother of Scenofest.
The mother of Scenofest. And it transformed that activity from a 2-day activity of walking around and looking at pictures on the wall to an active way of understanding what design and performance is about. And over a couple of versions of that, it changed from 100 students being there to 2,000 students being there. Things that were engaging and interesting and nice story about that. When we wanted to start this and have this set of lectures and things, the organizers really didn't think that was appropriate. It was not what it was about somehow. And so it was first promoted as a student Scenofest. It's a student Scenofest. But as soon as we did that, about a third of the people who wanted to be active in what we were doing were not students. They were professionals. Like me, I would want to do it. I would want to do these workshops. So there's no difference between students who are learning things and professional people who are learning things. So it has changed over time, but it was interesting in the beginning. It was like, we probably don't want to do this, and it was okay just for students then, because it would just be for students and it wouldn't really disturb things. And that kind of active engagement, which is, I guess, what I was trying to say about scenery, scenography, the scene design, that somehow it needs to be active and engaging. And that was, I think, a really good model for the success of that, how people really want to be engaged. They just don't want to stand in a gallery and look at a picture, which has its interest. I was impressed by it. You want to do things, and you want to grow by it in more active ways. It's more interesting. It's more fun. We should have fun in our lives.
Yes.
I believe this is the only life we'll have, and I think we ought to have fun in it.
Yeah, sure. And the thing is that, considering Scenofest, the thing is that you're talking just about the good stuff here, and we are experiencing some serious problems there back in OISTAT and things, because Michael and I are together there. We're
both on the leadership group.
We are leading.
We are the ones who should be deciding what kind of things are important to be done, and try to set a way that they can be accomplished by you all, the people who actually will do most of it.
And the huge problem was that PQ didn't want to host Scenofest anymore, and we didn't want to give up on it. So we have just taken it to the other place. But can you just
World
tell
stage
them
design,
something
yeah.
about that?
This what has been the most important worldwide exhibit of scenography, the PQ, is organized by countries, and every country gets to have an exhibit. Every country has to figure out how they want to curate that exhibit, who's going to be included and who's not, and why. And one would suppose there's nothing wrong with that because it establishes a certain, it means that there'll be a certain amount of quality in what is exhibited. And in an old-fashioned democratic sense, why should my work be excluded and your work included because she likes your work better than mine? I like my work better than yours. So who's to say what is the best value in this? And so OISTAT began a similar worldwide exhibit called World Stage Design that also happens every 4 years, 2 years off from the PQ. So there's a PQ, 2 years later, World Stage Design, 2 years later, PQ, and so on. And the difference for that is that anybody can submit a design for inclusion. Students can, professionals can, anybody can. The requirement is that the show actually has to be done. It's not just a theoretical design. It could be like this. It actually has to have been accomplished.
We will make a section on Cinefest, theoretical
No.
thing.
And so, and then there's a jury that looks at that, an international jury, and decides which are the best pieces that should be included in the physical exhibit that happens. It's generally about 100 shows or items will be exhibited as part of the exhibit. And then generally there'll be like a video wall somewhere, and all the exhibits, anybody who submitted something will be there, so it'll go through a series of pictures. So actually everybody is exhibited in a nice way. And beyond that, everybody has the opportunity, if you're doing good work, to be part of the real physical exhibit and be part of the consideration for awards. And I think it's, again, it's a way of broadening out and making what we do less exclusive. So if any of you are scene designers and you actually have a show done, you should submit the exhibit. You should submit the design and have it under consideration.
I'm sure we will have one in 2017. It's going to happen in Taipei, so just start working and we can have your design there exhibited and awarded. I will make sure that happens. And the thing is that...
There's also the architectural competition.
Yes, and it's going to happen for the PQ as well.
I know that was in question. I wasn't sure how it was going to settle out.
Yes, it's going to happen now, so we will just talk about that some other time.
Okay.
And I think the most exciting thing for me, not just traveling around the planet and having meetings with you, although I love to have meetings with you, but the thing is that this program that's happening in China, in Beijing, it literally changed my life in a way. So the thing is that it was a program which was titled quite problematically, International Stage Design Students Works Exchange. That was the first thing. And now we have changed it. The OISTAT changed it to Beijing International Biennial. It's going to happen this year, and it's happening every 2 years.
In October.
And, yes, and can you just... I'm sure that you were the one who started the program and negotiations with China, which are really tough ones, I believe.
China is very interested. They have as a priority at the moment arts, culture and arts, and they want to use that in different ways. That makes it sound too hard. That sounds too harsh. They desire for a broader expansion of cultural experience, of Chinese cultures in the world and other cultures being brought to China. And I was appointed as a professor there about 5 years ago to teach lighting in the same way, but also to bring this concept of internationalism to help them along with this. And the specific school, the Central Academy of Drama, where I work, is probably the top school. It's one of the top 2 schools, certainly, and probably the top school, the most important theater school. And as a step toward how to do this international, how to create more international exchange, we thought of this student exhibit. The PQ has a student exhibit, and that's organized in different ways, so that it's usually by country also, and different countries do it in different ways where students can exhibit. And we wanted to have something like that, but also, again, have it be active. To me, it's much less value if you have students from 15 countries walking around a museum looking at scene design. There's some value to that. We do a tour of the exhibit where the students who have brought their material there to be exhibited can talk about it to the other students who are there. And you get some sense of different kinds of education, different kinds of values, different kinds of aesthetics from that. But that's really an exhibit. And then we have the active part of this, this workshop, which we create some sort of brief to the group of students. So if you could consider yourself a group of students who do this, we sit down like this in the first day, and the one I can think of best was the first time we did it. We gave you, the students, the brief to design a 5-minute performance based on a Chinese poem. And the poem was a 4-line poem. The sky is blue, there's mountains, the river runs through it, and people are happy, or something like that. And then,
people were not happy, but
no,
that was the
whatever.
Yeah.
It was a simple poem like that. I mean, very broad and simple. And so we give that as the brief. That's what you should do, and divide you up in certain kinds of groups to start addressing it. And then all the adults leave the room. And 3 days later, you have to have a performance ready. And so the thing is, what are you going to do? And the people you need to talk to next to you might not speak your language. And in the best possible words, English is sort of the common language of the most common language to be used, but people speak that differently and have different understandings with it. So there's a huge amount of personal negotiation about accomplishing things, which adds, in my mind, to personal growth. I mean, I guess this is something that as a teacher, I'm actually more concerned with your personal growth than you as an artist. I mean, I would hope you're going to be an artist and be successful, but I actually am more concerned that you have a good and strong and happy life, and that that it's successful and that you're rewarded. And in the way that you say, that where do we get our rewards? You get a reward by accomplishing something that way. I mean, the kinds of products that have come out of that, and we've done this, I guess, just twice. Yeah. The kinds of things that have come out of it are extraordinary. And, at the end of it, everybody's kissing and hugging everybody, and you're crying, and you've learned each other. You've made friends. In the same way that I have through Oystat been able to make friends of people who are not like me, and I learn something from them. It's the same thing at a student level. And it's quite rewarding. And it's quite rewarding because the students who do this accomplish things in ways that I can't imagine. I mean, already in the little lighting labs that we did, students are accomplishing things in ways that I wouldn't have imagined. And it's because they're creative and they can do interesting, good things, especially when you free your minds to do it and figure out how to apply that freedom.
Yeah. And the other evening, Majkl and I were talking about what is the point of the workshop in Beijing. Should we just make people learn something new, or we should just make people be together? And I believe that we have accomplished the understanding of that this second part is much more important than if you're really going to get some unbelievable knowledge from a 2-day workshop or something.
What is a workshop? What should a workshop accomplish? It's interesting because this workshop, since I was part of starting it and negotiating with the Chinese about it, the Chinese colleagues wanted to have a model building and painting sessions, technique. And certainly I would believe you all could use technique. I know I could. But there's nothing creative in that. Yeah. And so slowly I think they were won over to let us do this way, and maybe have become won over in believing that it's a good thing. It's also challenging. You should challenge your teachers. You shouldn't just sit and listen and believe what they say. you should challenge your teachers. And you should push for things that you see are good and right and appropriate to add to your education. You have to invest yourself. And I know that my best students, embarrass me sometimes and push me sometimes to, why don't you do that for me, kinds of questions. And that are good because, some of us get old in our profession, and we need to be pushed to be reminded that needs change. And these kind of free-form activities, I think, are very valuable. But you should make sure that you're getting what you need and want to get in order to be successful. And to be successful is also wide open to interpretation. Who knows what these things mean? I mean, a lot of this, students get frustrated with me because I give broad kinds of assignments. And it's not unusual for students to say, well, what do you really want me to do? Should it be like this? And my response is, it could be like that.
Here is my friend, Ivan Pantelic. He was there at the first year that we had the workshop, and he took there an active participation, and he was noticed by Michael during his performance in his group, so you can ask him about that. And
he was supposed to be a designer, but clearly he was a director because he was making things happen.
Yes. and Vishnya was with me the other year, so you can also ask her what was the difference between these two workshops and how they but I believe that both of them were very successful, and the feedback that we got after the second year was phenomenal.
Yep.
And it just somehow gave me the strength to do the whole Cinefest thing. Yeah.
Well, how do you come up with good ideas? And
you
will have more good ideas because your students and some other students were extremely successful doing something which gives you, I know it gives me, then encouragement. Yeah. It's like neat to do. It's the same as doing a good performance. You feel good about yourself. We all have egos, and what makes our ego thrive? What makes us want to do things? What makes us who we are? And those good things, as well as some failures, help that way also, I assume. Because I can think of failures that I've been involved in. They also help you ego-wise, to want to do well and to analyze what good is.
Yes. So, Michael, do you have some more advices for students and for the audience? And do you want to tell them something
ask for
more
stuff.
to share?
Ask for stuff. We did a hypothetical.
Ask for stuff.
Ask for stuff.
Yes.
What do you need?
Yes.
Nobody ever has enough money and stuff. And if you accept that you don't have that, that's the end. You have to push for things. If you have to do a show, push for a budget. It's going to be difficult for your teachers to respond to whatever it is, but it's not, shucks, we don't have any money. If you're going to do things, you have to have stuff. You got to have goods. And you can find ways of doing it inexpensively as you need to. But you also have to spend money to do stuff. You just do. You have to have materials. Materials cost money. And, figuring out how to analyze and do that, what was it? After one of the things that we did, it occurred to me that what should come out of that, I suggested what might be an interesting art installation assignment. And we talked about it, and in a group, we built up ways that we could do something. And then I suggested what a budget for that might be. If it really happened, we could have so much money to do it. And then afterwards, I was disappointed that actually a better suggestion would be, okay, you guys put together a proposal and propose a budget. It should be realistic. So realistic doesn't say how much money it is, but it has to somehow be realistic. And then you actually have to do some different kinds of thinking to see how you put together a budget. If you need €100 or €500, well, how's that going to be used? Where is the value for that? You make a proposal, similar to the presentations this morning. You have to structure yourself to make a proposal and get something. In our business, actually, that's a big part of it. You make a design presentation. You make a proposal for a grant. It's a process that is actually part of what we need to do to be successful. So ask for stuff, but don't be stupid about it. Do it wisely. And what's stupid and what's wise? I don't know.
I have one more observation, is that I actually thought about something else when I asked about advices, and that is the thing with Michael's students. I had opportunity to meet some of them, and those were top students always. Michael is always bringing his top students everywhere he goes. And the thing is that they show, and they're taking over the control. So they just come to the spot, and they're immediately taking over the control. So I just wanted to ask, are you teaching them that stuff?
Yes.
So why? Why do you think that's it? And you tell them, ask for money, and you're teaching yours to take over the control.
I was going to make an example. I was talking to somebody about their babies and their children. And how, if any of you have children or want to have children, how are you going to want your children to be? How are you going to want to raise them? And to me, independence, I'm interested in children. I've had mine and now I have grandchildren. Independence and accomplishing things is important, and you have to have a certain kind of strength to do that. Mm-hmm. And my parallel with children is you go to a restaurant and you're having, you're eating with your kids and they say, I have to go to the bathroom, take me to the bathroom. And my answer is, it's back around the corner, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm afraid. Okay, don't go. Mm-hmm. I gotta go to the bathroom. And eventually children learn they don't have to, hang on to mommy's dress and be comfortable, that they can grow and become their own person somehow and take care of things. And it's the same way, this idea of a proposal. We require our students to do something major before they graduate, what we call a senior project. And the budget-wise, I tell them to create, they say what they want to do, and they want to know how much money they can have, and I say, make up a budget. Mm-hmm. You create it, and we'll say yes or no. And I know the budgets have gone between $0 and $10,000 for what we've done. And it's unusual to spend $10,000. That one was a lighting project. Because we had to rent a bunch of moving lights when moving lights were new. And if the student was going to use that, in fact, it was the boy that gave a presentation at Český Krumlov about LEDs. Mm-hmm. That was a $10,000 senior project that he had.
Yes, you needed it.
Well, but for him, it was all about movement. His research had to do with moving lights and dancers in movement,
so
and
it's
going
rational,
those things together. And he was good, and it was a good project, and we could get the money. I mean, I had to go out and get the money. It's just we don't have that kind of money, but money follows good ideas. Mm-hmm. So if you get your ideas together, and that's what I mean, organize, structure, make your proposal, make it good, and then if somebody says, oh, that's really good, but we don't have the money, get angry with them. I just got to have money. How are you going to do good things unless you can do them? So
stop talking about money.
Money, I know. Well, but there might be, but if you don't push your teachers to do that, how will they ever, go out of their way to find it and do something for you? And it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but over time it'll happen. Maybe not for you, but the people who follow you.
I think this is the
enough of this.
I think this is a wonderful moment to say thank you, Michael, and to ask the audience. So please ask the questions now. Now. Just stand up or just to speak up.
Stand up and introduce
Yes.
Stand up and introduce yourself.
Yes. Just speak up.
When you spoke on, my name is Tanko, and I already introduced myself today. And I have a question. When you talked about how naturalistic theater is less engaging than the abstract one, my question is, are there any conscious methodologies you're using for the very engagement with the audience? Or is it the thing that is done instinctively?
I think mostly it's instinctively, but if you're going to take on a concept, we have a professional theater in San Francisco that I like, that I go to, and they did this wonderful production of what was it? I want to say it was George Bernard Shaw, but I don't think it was. It was something like that. And it was a beautiful set. It was a room, two-story room. It was beautiful costumes. The show was written in like 1925 or something. And, you know, wonderfully acted. And I saw it and I could care less. And to me, the question would be, if you're going to do that show, you can choose to do it that way, and I'm sure some people are pleased with that. I mean, I'm speaking from my own perspective, so it's just my viewpoint. To me, it would be much more interesting to say, okay, what's the show about, and what's of value, and how, you know, what would be an interesting way to bring that about, and sort of a realistic acting style of storytelling that's supported by realistic stuff was beautiful, but in the end it was just like looking at a nice picture. You know, it was okay, but I actually had seen enough by intermission. I'm interested visually. I'm actually more interested to see what a show is like than to see a full show. I mean, I get a lot of that information. I mean, I think an hour and 20-minute show is better than a 3-hour show, automatically. I don't know what it takes 3 hours to do that you can't do in an hour and a half in a show.
Oh, many things.
No, it's just more of the same.
One of our favorite shows here at the Serbian National Theater lasts for 7 hours, and we all saw it multiple times. Yes.
So the construct is, don't we want to do something? You have to. Don't we want to do something interesting? This. I sit in production meetings early on, and this is what I sound like, because it's like you start with, well, what should it look like? What do we want to do? And the easiest thing to fall into is, you know, what the author describes. And to me, it's more challenging to take what the author describes and say, how can we do something like that that's really interesting? And there's no. You know, unfortunately, everything is so specific. Every show is so specific that it's virtually impossible to have general terms on how to do that. And so, to me, the construct is to want to do that. Maybe I'm drawing putting myself in the image of somebody else. But when I started teaching at Stanford, I was the youngest person teaching there. And there was an old guy, Wendell Cole, Professor Cole, who was a theater historian and stage designer. And he seemed to be 80 years old when I started, and then he worked another 40 years before he retired. So he wasn't 80, but that's what he looked like. But his mind was different. You know, he was always the one, and we were dealing with graduate students who were doing most of the directing of your age group. And he was the one that's saying, why do you want to do it like that? And he, you know, do drawings and have different ideas, because that was his aesthetic. That's sort of what he wanted to do. And it ended up one way or another, who knows? But I think that the way that happens is because you have artists who want it to happen that way. And you do research, and you show people how it might be like. You know, it's not just all words. There's good visual research to back up style and intent and ways of convincing your colleagues. I mean, as a stage designer, convincing a lighting designer and a director and a choreographer that it really ought to be open stage and like this, or confined, or, you know, confined until it opens up, or however you can you interpret a piece, the story, the narrative. To me, that's up for interpretation, that it's not fixed as soon as the author writes it. We're in a live, interactive business, so all of that is open for interpretation.
Questions?
Thank you for being brave and asking a question.
Yes.
I would like to thank you for using the term scene design.
Uh-huh.
Because really we are proud of using that term also. So I would like also to suggest to change the name of world stage design
To world scene design.
Oh.
And where did that come from? The two?
Yes, the title.
The interesting thing about OISTAT, or maybe any organization, is we say the organization does things. But an organization doesn't do anything. People do things. And people make up the organization.
Organization is just institutional.
And Pamela Howard made up the name Cinefest, and we go with it. Eric Fielding did World Stage Design, the first one in Toronto, and that was the name that he used for that, so we stuck with it. We might want to change it. We do change names in OISTAT. But yeah, I mean,
Scene,
yeah, it would stay the same. But yeah, well, it seems. Yes, no, that's well, and that is the movement. Ah, yes. Which is
perhaps it shouldn't be even design; it should be world scene.
Yeah, usurps. But that's true. I mean, where should a performance take place? Probably 20%, 25% of the performances we do in my school are site-specific somewhere, somehow. And some of them very simple with very little technical support. Some of them with more, you spend more money and you do more. It depends on the food chain. You have the most important, expensive ones, and then you have the cheapest ones you spend no money on, and there's all the food chain in between. And making a proposal of what's necessary. All the students who do this have to make a proposal. It's something like 90% of the shows we do in my university are student-directed. It's really aimed at students doing things. And that's unusual in universities in the US. Usually university theater departments are structured like theaters. And so the teachers do the directing and design, and the students do the building and the acting. And that's really the standard scheme for operation in most of universities. You have to realize we have like 2,000 or 2,500 universities, just a huge number. And so as we turn out scene designers, what are they going to do? We have more universities than theaters that pay salaries, that is. There's a lot of theaters that don't pay salaries, probably similar here to Serbia.
Quite similar.
Yes, it's just small theater companies, and they just exist, and people volunteer, or you get a little money for gas or gasoline or something, but it exists, and it's a way of building up and being discovered sometimes. Yes?
Today on our workshop, you have mentioned the term lighting the architecture. Can you describe in a few sentences when the architecture is well lit?
Good phrase, well lit, because you can't define what well lit is. I like that. And when we were talking this morning, almost always as we were talking about this, I would ask the question, what is going to be lit? Where is the light going to fall? I mean, look in this room, and where does the light fall? It falls on us as people in the space, but the light also defines the space, the way that it's there. And so you've got, to me, the most interesting architectural kinds of design, both interior and exterior, relates to the planes, the surfaces of the architecture and the way it's revealed. In the same way that I have my prejudice about scenery and walls and doors, the least interesting thing of architecture is a flat wall. You know, you build a square building with flat walls and you put floodlights on it and you're lighting the architecture. And the architecture is dull and the lighting is dull. And so you've accomplished your mission. So it's the architects, in my mind, the architects that understand interesting dynamics best use multiple planes and curved planes and things that, I mean, look at a face. What makes a face interesting? You know, it's the curves, it's the relationships between things. It's not my 3-year-old drawing of a face, you know, a circle and all of that. So it's the same kind of thing for architecture to me. It's as much what you can't see as what you do see. I mean, our imaginations give us more interest and vitality than the reality of our lives, I would hope. That is the case with me. I mean, I like to read more than I like to see a movie. And I do both of them, but I really like to read and have my imagination tell me these stories, just not plays. And so in a scene design or in a piece of architecture, when you can't see everything, it's more interesting because you believe there's something there. You know, it might be objects. Is there a statue or an art piece around a corner or around a curve? Or you're not sure, but it brings you into it. You're glad to walk through a piece of architecture like that because it's interesting. And then it comes to how you're going to light it, and you can reinforce the quality of shape like that, and And then the question is, how tasteful or tastelessly do you want to do that? I guess.
And did you ever have a chance to work with an architect on something?
Not really. I was trying to think of that. No, I haven't. I don't do architectural lighting. I like to look at it and judge it. And one of the assignments when I was teaching in Belgrade was to go out on what we call a scavenger hunt, if you know what that is, where you go out and try to find things. So walk around the city and find out, find a texture that's accentuated by intensity, find a texture that's accentuated by color, find a good example of color being used in marketing, find a bad example of color being used in marketing. We're talking about color of light, not color of object. And that's often one of the things that's hard to make a distinction when you're not used to using light, the difference between color of light and color of object. And so it's trying to draw awareness of those things. Because in architecture, you've got the color of the walls or the color of the light that you're using. And there's all sorts of different light sources that might be used in interesting ways. I had more examples of exterior lighting of architecture when I gave a talk the other day that were parts of videos that I couldn't get working right away. But to me, there's more examples. All of the biggest, most expensive examples of architectural lighting are not the most interesting to me. They're the most garish. They're the most outstanding. And I guess that's what people want. That's what the client wants in some way, or that's what's easy to give, I'm not sure, or the whole aspect of promotion, the commercial promotion that can be used through that. Architecture can be a landmark for a city or an area or a place that's very important. And to me, that should bring up the question of, how do we want our city perceived? And if it's with a bunch of flashing neon lights that says, by Toshiba, in a big, tall building. The lead lighting designer for the Beijing Olympics does mostly architectural lighting. And they're finishing the Shanghai Tower in Shanghai, which is going to be the second tallest building in the world. And Shanghai has terrible air. It's huge pollution and terrible air. And he's got a very interesting way. He's got a subtle, it was one of the videos I have. It's a building that is not a square building. It has a shape to it as it gets tall, and there's a sort of a line of light that accentuates that shape. And then he has the equivalent of spotlights in different places that are actually not going to light the building. They're going to light the dirty air around the building in ways that were interesting. Yeah, I thought it was a real interesting way to go about it. If as a saying in theater, the English saying in theater, that if all you have is lemons, you better make lemonade. Don't try to make orange juice. So in the same way, that's a way of how that's approached, because they have what they call low-lying fog. And when I grew up in Los Angeles, we used to call it smog. But it's just, it's not finished. I hope to see it I forget when he's supposed to finish it. But I'm anxious to see what it looks like. The model, the representation, the lighting model of it makes it look very interesting, because it's sort of abstract shapes and stuff that sometimes hit the building and go through the space around it, and sometimes light the space around it. So it's got like levels, it's sort of like a spaceship going up. I don't know. What's good? It's such a hard thing to determine. But I know I like curved spaces and spaces you can't see in architecture.
I know it would be very interesting to talk with Milica about that, because she's an architectural engineer who is in lighting business, and I'm sure that she sees things a little bit differently. Or yes, I think it would be very interesting to talk with, to listen to different standpoints on this. You don't really have the proper answers. So
no.
It's just
There are no proper answers. I mean, this is the deal with art. You have to make your own answers proper. But it's interesting, Milica. What do you do? What is your job title?
I'm a lighting designer.
When I started getting involved in this business, lighting designers didn't work on buildings. There were illumination engineers.
Illumination.
Illumination engineers. I'm a member of the North American Illumination Engineering Society.
Well, it sounds
And they have
fancy.
lighting designers now. But back when I joined, there were only illumination engineers.
engineer.
And that's a change already. So in 30 years, that's a change. Because they, you know, the discipline is appreciating the concept of design, not just the functionality of engineering something to work, but the fact that there can be design principles that enhance a situation.
They're thinking, sorry, they're not only thinking in quantitative terms, but also in terms of quality of the life,
Yep.
which is really important shift.
Anything else?
So if that is that, thank you, Michael.
Thank you for being here.
We hope to see you next year again.
I hope so too.
Yes, and thank you, Cultural Center.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Miljana.